December 7th, 1941, a date carved into the memory of a world in flames. A day when the rising sun glared over Pearl Harbor and dragged the United States into a war it did not choose, but one it eventually embraced with a ferocity the Japanese Empire had not anticipated. That morning, steel birds screamed overhead as battleships burned and men drowned beneath oil-black waves. But beneath the chaos, in the shadow of exploding harbors and falling sailors, something else awakened, a breed of soldier forged in hardship. Discipline and a strange, almost unsettling hunger for resistance. The Japanese remembered it not as an army, but as a force. It's the U.S. Marines, and soon across scattered Pacific islands. Rumors whispered through bamboo jungles that these men fought like ghosts, like beasts who crawled through mud and death and refused to die, even when logic said they should. At first, Japanese high command believed the Americans were soft products of jazz, cars, chewing gum, and Hollywood. A society too comfortable to endure the cruelty of jungle war. They did not yet understand that the Marines were a different kind of Americana tribe forged in Paris Island heat, trained to kill with bare hands if bullets ran dry. Conditioned to keep moving even when bones cracked and blood ran warm between fingers. Many Japanese soldiers later revealed in diaries that facing Marines felt like battling something ancient, something primal. In the black volcanic sands of the Pacific, the Marines did not walk into war. They crawled, bled, and adapted until, island by island, they became nightmares in the minds of their enemies. When the first Marines set foot on Guadalcanal in August 1942, they came not as conquerors, but survivors. They were underfed, undersupplied, surrounded by an enemy who knew the jungle like a childhood home. Nights were alive with the sound of cicadas, but darker than insects were the screams Japanese infiltrators sliding like shadows through palm fronds, whispering through the trees, some carrying only bayonets, others prepared to die in silent throat-cutting raids. Yet the Marines endured. They dug foxholes that filled with rain, mud, and centipedes, slept beside the bodies of friends turned blue and stiff, and woke to find enemy soldiers dead within arm's reach, still gripping knives. This was not the war of posters or marching bands. This was the war of hunger, rot, and hallucinations, where victory belonged to whoever broke last, in one lesser-known moment. Intercepted Japanese field reports described Marines as devils from the sea, men who preferred close quarters, where machetes flashed and bayonets gleamed, where dying meant staring into the eyes of the man who killed you. They wrote of Marines who charged through machine gun nests after their squads were torn apart, who fought on with limbs wrapped in shirts instead of bandages. On some nights, Marines crawled into enemy lines simply to gather information, to steal maps, or to slit throats so quietly that the body did not fall until morning. These stories spread like infection. Fear is a weapon, and in the Pacific, it chose sides. Guadalcanal became a graveyard of innocence. There were nights when the Marines held their rifles tight and whispered into the black, praying that sleep wouldn't come because sleep meant death. They ate rice captured from Japanese camps, boiled shoe leather to soften hunger, and learned the difference between courage and madness. The jungle was alive with disease. Men scratched mosquito bites until they bled, dug at fungal sores, watched comrades shake with fever as corpsemen whispered morphine prayers. Yet no matter the sickness, every morning they stood ready. Not because they loved war, but because they refused to surrender. And Japanese scouts who observed from the tree line wrote in diaries later recovered after the war that American Marines kept advancing even when they should be unable to stand. Months later, on Tarawa, the legend darkened. The Japanese fortified the island like a steel trap, confident no enemy could break through. They were wrong. On November 20th, 1943, Marines hit the reefs under machine gun fire so thick it cut men in half before they drowned. Bodies floated like broken dolls in the surf, but the survivors crawled forward. Some Marines used corpses as cover, pushing them like shields through shallow tides. Officers screamed orders no one could hear over bullets snapping like angry insects. And still they moved. A Japanese officer wrote that Americans kept coming, crawling over their dead as though they felt no fear. That image haunted the defenders more than artillery. In bunkers so hot gun barrels glowed red, Japanese defenders fought with fanatic resolve. They believed dying was honor, that surrender was worse than rot. Yet even they began to fear what they could not break. Survivors describe Marines who fought with knives and rifle butts when ammunition vanished, who leaped into bunkers like possessed animals. They did not stop. Not for thirst, not for wounds, not for the screaming of dying men. On that island, Marines took ground measured not in yards, but in inches soaked with blood. When the battle was over, 3 days felt like 3 lifetimes, and 7,000 bodies fed the sand. Tarawa was not victory. It was a warning carved into coral and bone. But war is never just bullets. Beneath the surface of battles lay another quiet front: intelligence, deception, shadows. The Marines carried more than rifles. They carried radio operators trained to intercept coded Japanese communications, scouts who stalked jungle trails barefoot to avoid detection, Navajo code talkers whose language became an unbreakable cipher. The Japanese, masters of code breaking against China years earlier, found themselves grasping at syllables like sand. They could not crack Navajo, not once. Marines armed with this secret tongue coordinated attacks with ghostly precision. Entire battalions moved like smoke, striking before defenders knew they were coming. Fear grew. Diaries recovered years later revealed Japanese soldiers whispering about voices of spirits, guiding American units. On New Britain, Marines waged a war of shadows. They slipped into swamps, where crocodiles glided like death itself, where leeches fattened on blood, where rain fell so heavy it felt like drowning standing up. Japanese command expected the terrain to kill Americans. Instead, the Marines adapted, weaving through mangrove roots like predators. They learned to shoot only when necessary, to let the jungle speak. They marked trails with broken leaves instead of footprints. They carried grenades in pockets, knives under sleeves, memories of friends buried in shallow graves. Each island hardened them darker, quieter, more relentless. At night, they heard Japanese soldiers singing before suicide charges high, trembling voices carried by wind. Bonsai attacks could break lesser forces. But Marines braced, teeth clenched, bayonets fixed. When thousands of screaming men rushed under moonlight, Marines did not flee, they extinguished them. Rifle fire chopped bodies like wheat. Flamethrowers turned bunkers into ovens. Survivors wrote that Marines looked like figures carved from stone, faces empty, movements precise, as though death had become routine. The Japanese fear grew not from defeat alone, but from the way Marines killed, without hesitation, as though killing was simply another necessary task. Yet even the bravest men bleed. On Peleliu, heat cooked the air until lungs burned. Temperatures soared past 110 degrees. Water ran out. Marines licked condensation from rifle barrels, sucked moisture from leaves. Their tongues swelled, lips cracked. Still they attacked limestone ridges where Japanese defenders waited like phantoms. The island offered no mercy. Coral sliced boots open, carving feet raw. Every cave held machine guns, every shadow an ambush. Marines fought inch by inch against an enemy unwilling to die until flesh boiled away. Some historians later questioned the necessity of that island. But men who fought there remembered something else the moment humanity slipped away. Replaced by a survival older than civilization, flamethrowers became tools of war, turning caves into infernos. Marines advanced as screams echoed from within stone tunnels, screams that stayed in dreams long after war ended. Some Marines wept, others vomited, others turned numb. The Japanese fought from tunnels honeycombed beneath the island, connected by secret passages allowing sudden counterattacks. Marines sometimes heard footsteps beneath their feet, like ghosts walking under the earth. Combat here was not war, it was hell carved into rock. And through that hell, Marines continued forward. But the fear Japan felt toward Marines was not only earned through combat, it was cultivated through deception. U.S. intelligence fed false strategies through intercepted channels, sending Japanese forces to islands already bypassed. Marines slipped past strongholds, leaving thousands of enemy soldiers stranded to starve. Bodies dried like leather beneath tropical skies, rifles rusting beside them. On some islands, Marines never landed. Starvation won instead. The darkest operations were never spoken of publicly. Small Marine reconnaissance teams swam miles in pitch-black water, knifing through waves under moonless skies. They mapped beaches, measured tides, counted enemy positions while sharks circled. One forgotten operation involved Marines who crawled across a reef at night to plant explosives under Japanese anti-ship defenses, treating silently as guards slept. When dawn arrived, explosions tore open coastal guns, clearing the way for invasion. Their names never appeared in newspapers. On Saipan, civilians were caught between armies, terrified by Japanese propaganda claiming Marines would torture them. Women leaped from cliffs clutching children, choosing death over lies they believed. Marines watched helplessly, shouting in broken Japanese, crying out that they would protect them, not harm them. Some jumped into surf to save those still alive. These moments carved guilt deep into the souls of men who returned home changed forever.